When you hear the name Game Freak, chances are the first thing that comes to mind is Pokemon. Turn-based battles, colorful creatures, and games made primarily for Nintendo systems. But Beast of Reincarnation is something completely different. This is a dark, post-apocalyptic action RPG featuring sword fights, corrupted monsters, abandoned technology, and a mysterious young woman traveling alongside a blight-infected dog. After playing through the beginning of the game, I can already say this is one of the most unexpected games Game Freak has ever created. But does Beast of Reincarnation actually have what it takes to establish a new identity for the studio? Or is this simply Game Freak experimenting outside its comfort zone? Let's talk about my first impressions of the gameplay, the world, and the story so far. And don't worry, I'm only discussing what happens near the beginning of the game, so there won't be any major spoilers. One of the first things that immediately stands out is the atmosphere. Beast of Reincarnation takes place in Japan in the year 4026. Civilization as we recognize it is essentially gone, and the world has been transformed by a mysterious parasitic force called the Blight. Instead of giving us a typical post-apocalyptic environment filled with gray buildings and empty streets, the game presents a world that has been completely reclaimed by nature. Plants cover the remains of abandoned structures. Giant roots stretch across the landscape. Old machines continue operating long after the civilization that created them disappeared. The environments feel beautiful, but they also feel dangerous. You can tell that something terrible happened here, even when the game hasn't completely explained it yet. That mystery is probably the strongest part of the opening. The game gives you enough information to understand the immediate situation, but it doesn't explain everything at once. It wants you to ask questions. What exactly caused the world to collapse? Where did the Blight come from? Why are some machines still functioning? And most importantly, what is Emma's true connection to everything happening around her? Visually, the game appears to take inspiration from games like Nier, Automata, Stellar Blade, and Sekiro, but it also has its own identity. The combination of futuristic technology, traditional Japanese imagery, and mutated plant life gives this world a distinctive appearance. Even when there isn't much action happening, the environmental design makes you want to continue forward just to see what is around the next corner. Emma and Ku. The main character is Emma, a young woman known as a sealer. Emma was born with the Blight inside her, which gives her powers that ordinary people don't possess. But that power also makes other people fear her. Her responsibility as a sealer is to hunt creatures infected by the Blight, defeat them, and absorb their corruption into her own body. That alone creates an interesting contradiction. Emma might be one of humanity's best chances for survival, but she is also connected to the same force that is destroying the world. During the opening, Emma comes across as quiet, emotionally distant, and almost disconnected from ordinary human behavior. She isn't presented like the typical confident action hero who constantly explains how she feels. Instead, she appears to be someone who is still learning what emotions and personal connections actually mean. That makes her relationship with Ku especially important. Ku is Emma's canine companion, but he isn't simply included to make the game more emotional or give players a cute animal to protect. He is a malefact, a creature that has also been infected by the Blight. Under normal circumstances, Emma should probably view Ku as another target. Instead, the two travel and fight together. That relationship creates one of the opening story's biggest questions. Why did Emma spare him? What makes Ku different from the other infected creatures? And what will happen if the Blight inside either of them becomes impossible to control? The game doesn't immediately provide every answer, but the bond between Emma and Ku already feels like the emotional center of the story. The combat is where Beast of Reincarnation begins to separate itself from other action RPGs. You directly control Emma during fights. She can attack with her katana, dodge incoming strikes, and parry enemies at the correct moment. The swordplay feels deliberate without being excessively slow. You can't simply mash the attack button through every encounter because enemies can interrupt you, surround you, or punish careless movement. Parrying appears to be one of the most important mechanics. Successfully deflecting an attack doesn't just protect Emma, it also helps build the resources needed to activate Ku's abilities. This creates a combat system built around cooperation. Emma handles the fast, real-time sword fighting while Ku provides powerful support attacks through a command-based menu. When you open Ku's ability menu, the action slows down, giving you time to select the appropriate skill. That creates an interesting mixture of real-time action and traditional RPG strategy. You might be attacking and parrying one moment, then slowing everything down to decide which ability Ku should use next. It's almost like the developers took pieces of Sekiro's parry system and combined them with the companion commands from a turn-based RPG. And surprisingly, the two styles work together. The early fights are mostly designed to introduce each mechanic separately, so the combat hasn't revealed its full depth yet. But the foundation is promising. Parries feel satisfying, especially because of the sound and visual effects produced when weapons collide. Dodging is still important because certain attacks either cannot be blocked or are safer to avoid completely. Ku's abilities also prevent him from feeling like an NPC who simply follows you around. You are actively thinking about when to use him and how his abilities can change an encounter. That is important because the game describes itself as a one-person, one-dog action RPG. And based on the opening, that description is accurate. Emma and Ku function as a single combat unit. The opening introduces a mixture of corrupted animals and mechanical enemies known as golems. The Malefacts are living creatures that have been transformed by the blight. Their designs combine recognizable animal features with flowers, roots, and unnatural growths. They look beautiful and disturbing at the same time. The golems provide a different type of threat. They are remnants of the technological world that existed before, and some of them continue carrying out old instructions despite everything around them having changed. Having both natural and mechanical enemies helps reinforce the game's central theme. This world is caught between nature and technology, and neither side has escaped the destruction. Exploration is relatively guided during the opening, which makes sense because the game is still teaching you its systems. There are materials to collect, optional paths to investigate, and environmental obstacles that require Emma's blight abilities. Her powers allow her to interact with plant life and move through areas in ways an ordinary character couldn't. The movement isn't completely open, but it has enough speed and verticality to keep exploration from feeling like you're simply walking down a hallway. Once the game moves beyond its tutorials, the areas begin offering more room to search for optional encounters and resources. It should be made clear, however, that Beast of Reincarnation is not a traditional open-world game. The structure appears closer to a series of large, explorable regions that eventually guide you toward a major objective or boss. Personally, I don't consider that a problem. Not every action RPG needs a gigantic map filled with hundreds of icons. A smaller, more focused world can be better if the environments remain interesting and the exploration is properly rewarded. The main mission involves defeating powerful creatures known as the Nushi. These are especially dangerous malefacts connected to the blight spreading throughout different regions. Emma's job is to defeat them and absorb their power, eventually preparing herself to confront the Beast of Reincarnation. According to what we learn early on, this beast represents a threat capable of bringing another cycle of destruction to the world. But the opening makes it clear that the situation probably isn't as straightforward as Emma has been told. Emma receives instructions and follows her mission with very little hesitation, but several interactions suggest there is more happening behind the scenes. Some characters recognize what Emma is and immediately treat her with suspicion. Others appear to know more about her purpose than they are willing to explain. Even certain golems seem connected to events from the past. The story is building toward the possibility that Emma's mission, her forgotten memories, and the origin of the blight are all connected. That doesn't necessarily mean every mystery will have a shocking answer, but the opening does a good job of creating curiosity. I want to know who Emma was before this journey. I want to understand why she has difficulty expressing emotion. And I especially want to learn how Ku became connected to her. The story hasn't completely won me over yet because it is still introducing its terminology and setting up its larger conflict. However, the foundation is strong enough to keep me interested. Not everything about the opening is perfect. The game introduces a lot of names, concepts, and terminology fairly quickly. Ceilings, malefacts, Nushi, golems, and the blight all have specific meanings, and it may take some time before everything becomes clear. Some of the dialogue also feels deliberately vague because the game wants to preserve its mysteries. That creates atmosphere, but it can occasionally make the story feel like it is withholding information simply to keep the player guessing. The opening combat encounters are enjoyable, but enemy variety will be extremely important later. A parry-focused system can become repetitive if players continue fighting the same types of enemies with similar attack patterns. The same applies to exploration. The environments are attractive, but the optional paths need meaningful rewards if the game expects players to explore every section. These aren't major problems based solely on the beginning, but they are areas I'll be watching as I continue playing. My first impression of Beast of Reincarnation is mostly positive. The game has an intriguing world, a strong atmosphere, and a combat system that feels familiar while still introducing an interesting companion mechanic. Emma and Ku are already the biggest reason I want to continue. Their relationship gives the story an emotional foundation, while their cooperation makes the combat more than a standard sword-fighting system. The opening doesn't reveal everything Beast of Reincarnation has to offer, and it definitely doesn't provide answers to all of its mysteries. But it does enough to make me want those answers. For Game Freak, this is a massive departure from what most players associate with the studio. This isn't Pokémon with a darker art style. It's an ambitious action RPG trying to establish its own world, characters, and style of combat. Whether it can maintain that momentum for the entire game remains to be seen. But based on the beginning, Beast of Reincarnation has my attention. The combat is satisfying, the world is visually interesting, and the relationship between Emma and Ku has real potential. Right now, I'm cautiously optimistic. But those are just my first impressions. Have you played Beast of Reincarnation yet? What do you think about the combat, the story, and Game Freak stepping outside the Pokémon franchise? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gaming discussions, reviews, and first impressions. Thanks for watching.